We're back.
We're back.
We're back. It's been a while.
Yeah, I know.
We kind of pre-batched because I was going to town for work.
Yeah.
Alexis started a new job. Fresh start.
Fresh start. So
You got a new
excited.
thing coming.
What was the song that we were singing on our road trip? The one you showed me?
God is doing it. God is doing a new thing.
What was it at the end?
Peace in your heart.
Fresh start.
That's what you have.
Yeah.
Peace in your heart.
And a fresh start. It's exactly what I have. Thank you,
Aw,
Jesus.
I'm so happy.
I'm thrilled.
I'm so excited for you. You already seem lighter.
I feel like a nicer person. Truly.
I mean, you've always been a nice person.
Yeah, I've always been
But
a nice person, but like
you just seem lighter.
yeah.
I mean, you're a
Scary.
weekend, but still, you seem like.
There's something about a fresh start that's just, it makes you want to maintain that feeling. Oh, I didn't tell you. I'm thinking about starting Pilates. Actually, I'm not thinking about it. I am going to start Pilates.
I'm very proud of you.
Say a prayer for me.
I'm never starting Pilates. That's terrifying.
No. I'm
terrifying,
going to do it
Alexis.
for a month and then I'm going to recruit you. We can do it.
If y'all are listening on
All
audio,
the
you can't see
girls-
my face, but it's terrifying.
Her face is
I don't want
no.
to go on that machine. Or whatever they call it, the transformer.
If you can rollerblade.
That was a one-time deal. That was a one-time deal. I already have had an offer to go roller skate, and I was like, nope, only on a pink rink with Alexis.
me.
That's the only.
I'll take that win.
The
I'll take
only-
that win.
Yeah. But I'm really excited for you.
I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay.
I think you might like it if you give it a try, but
Well,
baby steps. Baby steps.
I'm like, yeah, I might.
She's
Not.
like, not ever. Our next Ancient Influencers episode.
Ancient influencers. Y'all have had such a great response to ancient influencer episodes.
Yeah. Honestly.
Just, I think, one, getting to know these more mini characters in the Bible. People really love that. And then two, y'all really love the historical tie-ins and putting things in perspective.
Like understanding the world that they're coming
Yes.
from. And what their day-to-day looks like.
We look at the Bible like it's operating in its own little universe. And
The Bible is so many things, but like it's also a history book. And there are like historical books of the Bible. I can't remember which ones they were, but there's like a section of the Bible that's like purely history, and it's really cool. I just feel like there's something in the Bible for everyone,
yeah.
regardless of like your interests. Like it's captivating in its own way.
Well, it's true and it's real. When you were going through what was happening in different places of the world
Oh yeah,
on the last Ancient Influencer, I was like, because in my head, what's going on in the Bible is only going on. I don't picture
Right.
other parts of the world
Yeah.
or any other historical event to be going on at the same time. What's happening in the Bible is like happening in a snow globe. There's no outside world in my head. And
In
so
your
you're putting
head.
in that perspective, and I was like,
it's really cool.
this is neat. So, all right, you guys, we are going to hop into our podcast time machine.
We need to come up with some
We
fun
do.
music or something.
Dun 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 dun.
Okay, we're back.
To 4380,
43, yeah,
around about 4380. And these are all like approximate.
approximate dates. So this story occurs 10 years after Jesus has already resurrected and ascended back into heaven. So 10 years after that, about 10 to
Okay.
15 years
Oh,
after.
right.
So
Which, because this is something you had to explain to me too.
the timing.
Yes, well, because I always just thought AD was after death.
Right.
So,
So
you explain
there's
this to me, and maybe you can explain it to our listeners too.
so the conventions to which people like time things basically. So AD has two meanings. There's after death, which is like the Christian understanding of AD, and then there's Anno Domini, which is like the Latin term for AD, and then BC is
Before Christ.
before Christ in the biblical sense. And then it's BCE. I can't remember what it's called
But basically,
that way.
AD starts when Jesus is born,
Correct. So
not after his death.
the calculation of time. So people use Jesus's death actually. The year he died, 30 AD, and he was 33 years old whenever he died. So historians calculate the 33 years leading up to his death in 30 AD, which would put his birth
At 0.
I mean, yeah, but technically, in technical terms, like 3 BCE. If we're going to be super technical about it. But yes, technically, our 0 starts basically at the time of Jesus's birth and then proceeds forward. And then, now I'm not an expert. That's just to help you understand.
Makes more sense, because when we were looking at this, and when y'all hear this story, if y'all aren't familiar with the story of Rhoda, and they're talking about the early church, and I was thinking 43 AD, I was going, dang, a lot of these disciples have to be 70. But now I'm like, wait, actually, this is 10 years later.
Yes.
So they're in their 30s or 40s.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are getting into the story of Rhoda. And Alexis is going to give us some historical facts. Our resident Miss Campanile.
Resident teacher.
Our resident teacher.
Okay, so Rhoda was a slave or a servant. Servanthood and slavery in the New Testament, particularly Jerusalem, was a common practice. So you also have to think this is also during the time period of the Roman Empire. Slaves came from all places, all territories that the Roman Empire reached. There was a slave from that territory or that region. Oftentimes people became slaves due to war, being captives, debts owed to people. So some people would sell their kids into slavery, and that would settle a debt, and that's just how the world operated back then. And a fun fact that you had requested, fashion wise, servants, you would be able to single out a servant based off of what they were wearing most times. People who were free usually wore longer tunics. So a tunic is just a dress, basically, with no crazy stitching or anything. It's just kind of a tunic, just a long garment. Whereas free people would have longer ones that went down to their ankles. Most times slaves wore tunics that were short. That was one way to identify people who did a lot of mobile work and hard labor would usually wear shorter tunics, but they also would sometimes wear scarves or a girdle, and both of those items were ways that people could identify slaves and servants. Dependent on where the slaves were from, sometimes they had head garments that matched the region that they're from, and they would maintain that throughout their servanthood. And you'd be able to identify these people by the short tunic, some sort of scarf or girdle, or some sort of custom and ethnic garment. Most of the times they didn't have jewelry. Back then, a lot of the wealthier people would show their wealth by wearing gold jewelry or stones, rhinestones, or stuff like that. But that was just one way to separate free peoples from servants. Of course, leather sandals. That was your shoe of the day for someone at that status. But another fun fact relative to this exact time period, I was telling you earlier, there's a series that I really, really recommend people read, and it's called The Mark of the Lion series by Francine Rivers. And the first book is called A Voice in the Wind, and it follows the story of a Jewish slave girl.
It gets juicy,
you guys. It's so good, y'all. It follows her life basically from the sack of Jerusalem. So the Roman Empire wipes out Jerusalem because of rebellions. It follows her story from there to her journey to Rome. She is a believer and is close to, I believe it's Paul or Peter. She grew up listening to him preach, so she's got that affinity. But it also follows her love life with a Roman.
We are really into our love lives these days.
What can I say? It's the summer of love.
It is summer of love.
But if that's it, it follows her love story, follows her life story. It also follows the story of the Roman guy that she falls in love with, and then it also follows the story of a Germanic gladiator and his love life, and their stories all intertwine. And there's 3 books, each book from a different perspective. So,
It sounds so good.
and it's written by a Christian author. It is a Christian book. But anyways, that just kind of launches us into this whole world
Yeah.
and where we are. We discussed it was 43 AD.
And we are looking at Acts 12.
Yep.
This is where a majority of the story is taking place. And like with most of our ancient influencers so far, Rhoda is barely mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
She has
3 verses.
teeny tiny bit in the Bible, but she sets a huge example for Christians and shows us, again, traits that we should be striving to hold and maintain as people of the faith. So, as we mentioned, Rhoda is a servant in the house of Mary, who this is the mother of John Mark. And I actually put in the notes that he should be another ancient influencer because there's a lot surrounding him that I hadn't really pieced together until I was trying to do my study for this. And I was like, oh, there's actually quite a bit surrounding John Mark that would be interesting to look into. And what is happening is right now, King Herod, and now this is not the Herod
At the time of Jesus' birth, this is his,
grandson.
yeah,
And
Harold Agrippa the First.
yes. And there, I feel like that's also something important because pre-podcast me would have just registered it as the same person.
Ah, okay.
I would have just registered it as the same Herod.
Well, it's really interesting because this Harold Agrippa, this was a period of extreme and intense Christian persecution. So not only Harold, the king of the Jewish people at that time, or that region of Judea, but also the emperor at the time. I think it was Claudius. I'm not going to say because I don't know for sure. But just think about in this time, Christians were targeted.
Oh, yeah.
You go.
Well, and Christians were targeted by Romans and Jews. Because this is the early start of the church. So essentially what's taking place right now is James has just been killed. And now King Herod has Peter locked up and he is planning to execute him as well. And this is all for sharing the gospel, right? This was the call, the mission of the disciples to go out and spread the word. So as they're doing this, Peter gets captured. He's put into, I guess you call it prison, essentially. He's being held. But Herod is waiting until after Passover to execute him. So instead of just executing him, doing it right then, he's actually waiting, which kind of points to God's timing.
Yep, his divine
There's a
plan.
reason that God had that in Herod's mind that, oh, wait, I'm not going to do this during Passover. So as they're waiting, you have people of the early church in Mary's home, and they're all praying, and they're all praying and praying and praying for Peter's return, for Peter to be, I don't know if released is the word, or escape, but basically for Peter to survive.
Yeah.
For Peter's survival. And Rhoda is the servant of Mary, so she's in the home. But I was reading, she likely wasn't an active participant because she was a servant, so she probably wasn't in the group huddle with everybody praying. She was probably kind of off to the side, you know, in the corner praying on her own.
And yeah, and also listening. I mean, she would have been familiar with Peter.
Oh,
And,
definitely.
and just the people who would come to Mary's home as early Christians. She would have been in her cleaning or in her setting stuff up, listening, and also become familiar with the individuals that entered that home at any given time.
Right. So she was also praying, probably on her own. And what ends up happening is while this prayer is taking place, God literally miraculously sets Peter free. an angel appears to him, wakes him up, and Herod had gone through crazy measures to make sure that Peter does not escape.
Yeah.
So I had written out into my notes that Herod had bound Peter to two soldiers. So he's literally chained to
Linked.
two soldiers while he
Yeah.
is sleeping. And then he has guards at the guard post. So somehow God manages. I mean, angel comes, these chains break, these guards don't wake up, nothing happens. And this angel leads him out, leads him to the city gate, which just opens, and they walk right on through. And then that's when Peter heads to
Mary's house.
Mary's house.
Yeah. So and I think, I don't know, does he still have like the chains attached to him, like whenever he's walking?
I think they literally just break off his arms.
Oh, okay.
And he just walks, and he almost thinks he's dreaming. He's like, is this real? And then once he gets in the city, he's like, oh, okay, this is real.
Right.
I better go somewhere I'm safe.
Right.
So he heads to Mary's house, not even knowing. Everyone's there praying for him to survive, to be released. And then here he comes.
Right.
And so Rhoda hears the knocking on the door. Everyone's praying. She's the servant. She goes to the door, and she can hear Peter outside. And literally, she doesn't even answer the door, you guys. She gets so excited that she runs back into the room, up the stairs. I don't even know how these homes are laid out. For some reason, I picture it being upstairs. But she runs back, and she's like, oh my gosh, Peter's outside, Peter's outside. And all of these praying Christians are like, you've lost it.
Like,
you're crazy.
Yeah. Who are you?
There's no
You're
way.
a servant girl. You don't know anything, kind of thing.
They
Just very dismissive towards her.
they didn't believe her. They thought maybe he was an angel. They didn't believe he was actually there until they went and let him in themselves. So after reading that story, I think the number one biggest takeaway is the power of prayer. And when I was doing my research, something that stood out was the fact that man has nothing on God. Herod went through everything. He tried to be as extreme as he possibly could to make sure Peter couldn't escape, and yet that was nothing.
And he
for
like
God.
he literally walked through it.
He's chained
With
to guards.
with no obstacles. Like the guards didn't wake up. The city gates were opened, or the prison gates were opened, just seamlessly.
Man has literally nothing on God, and I want anyone out there who's going through something right now to be encouraged by that. If you're going through something at work, if you're going through something in a relationship, anything earthly, just remember that has nothing on God.
You might feel like it is the most impossible situation with all the obstacles you could possibly imagine. No one was sitting there thinking, Peter wasn't sitting there thinking,
He even thought it was a dream.
right, like, okay, there's no way I'm getting out of this. There's no feasible explanation as to how I could get out of this. And literally God does his thing, and he's walking out of a prison.
God is
Walking
doing it. You know
God
he's
is doing a new thing. God is doing it. Well, something that I took away was a couple of things. One, it reminded me of Mary Magdalene seeing Jesus for the first time, being the first person to see Jesus after his resurrection. God intentionally and specifically chose Mary for that reason, a woman. In the same way, God chose Rhoda to advise the others and tell the others of yet another miracle that seemed impossible. They did not believe her, but God chose her to bring the news that Peter was at the gate.
Right.
It was not only a woman, but it was a slave girl, a servant girl, someone whose class was subordinate to everyone else. A servant's opinion was not taken seriously, but the fact that God chose a servant girl to deliver the message of Peter's liberation speaks volumes, because like at that time, servants were the lowest of the low.
Right. Well,
You
and even
know,
thinking about Mary Magdalene, right? Her reputation
her reputation.
wasn't great.
Right. And it just goes to show that Jesus eliminated that. Jesus eliminated status. Everyone is equal
Yes.
in his eyes, and we should all be treating each other as such. There is no wealthier than you, or, I'm at the bottom of the barrel, and so treat me as such. And everyone is equal. Everyone is capable of sharing the gospel. Everyone has a role to play, and those were the two things that stood out to me.
Thinking along those lines of how there is no totem pole, let's say. We get really caught up in thinking that pastors are here and then people who serve in church are here and then our minds can actually do that. And I've even always had this almost like growing up, I looked at my pastors with such admiration because I just felt like they had a
Yeah, and I think that's okay. I mean,
yeah.
you have admiration for your spiritual leaders, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're better than you.
No, and I always thought it's almost like they had a speed dial to God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had a deeper connection, but we all have that ability.
We all have that authority in Jesus.
We can all tap into that, and maybe they're just like using that muscle more.
Well, they are. I mean, to be a pastor, you have to study the Bible.
Right.
It comes with immense prayer. You surround yourself with people who are doing the same things. So just naturally,
But we have the same access.
it's
just tapping into it.
You do have the same access. Exactly.
It's just tapping
And
into
now, again, I also admire our spiritual leaders and I hold them in high regard. But their access is the same as ours, like you were saying. So we can be as learned as pastors can be. Even this broken in spirit can start their discipleship walk. We don't have to know everything to get started. Heck, we don't. And we're sitting here doing a podcast, diving
Learning
into the
as we go
word. We're
along.
learning as we go.
It's very true. And something else, because I also had noticed the parallels to Mary. And it just kind of made me think that I feel like in these scenarios, in Mary encountering Jesus, in Rhoda hearing Peter, I feel like God, we know that God has created male and female differently. And he created us distinctly differently for a purpose. And I feel when I see these instances, God gave women a softness that men don't always have, right? A man might be a bit more strong-willed. It might take a little bit more for him to believe something, where a woman has this softness and can have, and it depends on the circumstances and it depends on the woman, but can have this softness.
I think a special discernment that women have.
It allows for that blind faith. Being a woman and having this soft heart, and we're created with soft hearts so that we can be nurturing to our children. And we were designed that way on purpose. And I feel like God is utilizing that in Mary and in Rhoda. He knows how he designed our hearts. And so he's utilizing that to deliver these moments of good news, because had it been a man that went to the tomb instead of Mary, who knows? They might have had doubt. They might have needed a little more.
Thomas did.
Right. They might have needed a little more judging to actually believe it and go proclaim it. Where Mary was just like, oh, yeah, he's back.
Yeah, that's him.
Done. And Rhoda like, oh, I hear the voice. I'm going up and telling
just
everyone.
the voice. She didn't even see him.
She didn't open the
just
door.
heard his voice.
Another.
And knew his voice from him coming and being there previously. That is the definition of blind faith.
Both of them, blind faith. And then also, I think a key takeaway for us is praying boldly. Not just saying we're praying boldly and not just having prayers that sound really good. Because at the end of the day, it does not matter if your prayers sound good. It matters if your prayers come from the heart. Are you praying with expectation, or are you praying to go through the motions?
Right.
Because someone can say a really beautiful prayer, and I used to be so self-conscious about praying out loud. Even the first time like doing announcements at church, I was like, I'm so nervous. I don't want to pray in front of an entire church. Like, I'm not eloquent with my words like that. I don't know how to say, like, there are people who can pray beautifully, but it doesn't matter how beautiful your prayer is. What matters is, are you praying boldly? Are you praying with expectation? Are you just saying the words?
What strikes me is the very people who were praying for Peter to be released or somehow taken out of the situation are the very same people who refused to believe that he was released.
Right. They don't believe their prayers are being answered.
Right.
You're not actually praying with expectation.
No.
Because then God's literally giving it to you and you're not
believing it.
Accepting
You're not
it,
accepting
believing
it or receiving it.
And I think we have to, if we're going to believe in the power of prayers, if we're going to believe that God still does miracles, which is so prominent to Lex and I, because it's a big thing in our churches, is these ideas of miracle opportunities, and that God is still doing the same thing that he was doing in the Bible. He's still doing them now. We just maybe don't hear about them every day.
Well, I think it's time to stop, as Christians, I think it's time to stop chalking things up to a coincidence and accepting that, no, that is God's hand in my life. This whole trend right now, the butterfly effect. It's not just these crazy coincidences that lead you to this, wonderful thing in your life. It is God's gracious hand guiding you, opening doors, closing doors. It's not a coincidence. It's God acting in your life to give you beautiful things that he promised you.
Exactly.
And I think we have to start acknowledging when God is acting in our life. And when a prayer is answered, stop acting like it's just a run-of-the-mill kind of thing. Celebrate, be victorious, be joyous in your victories and in your valleys. But I think what I'm getting at is we have to start celebrating more.
We do. And also not ignoring it when God answers your prayer. And sometimes an answered prayer might not look how you want it to look.
Right.
We can pray for clarity on something.
Sure.
We can pray for God to reveal something to us. You've had it recently where you've been like, God, if this is for me, great. If it's not, just take it away right now.
And he did. Two times.
I prayed for clarity on a big situation in my life, and it made my life a lot harder. But once I got the clarity, it was like I had asked God for it. So to ignore God's answer, it wasn't the easy answer, but to ignore it would be disrespectful. I asked for that. I prayed for that. So we can't ignore it when God answers our prayers. And sometimes he's answering them and they're happening and we're not even recognizing it. And there are so many things that I can go through in my life and be like, check, check, check. Like little things that have happened. It's like, wow, I prayed for that. It happened. God came through. And he's going to keep coming through. And so I think you're so right. We need to celebrate.
And just open our eyes to understand when God is answering those prayers. Just like you said, even if it's not in the way we asked for it, he still answered your prayer. And he did it in the way that's best for you.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, in the moment, it might feel like, oh, but why? That's not the answer I wanted.
And it's okay to do that. It's okay to ask God why. It really is. Like, you can wrestle with God. And it's okay to ask your questions. And it's okay to emote. It's okay to be upset. But ultimately, you, let that out and you pray and you start just thanking him.
Yeah.
God can use anyone. And that's something that we've learned with all of our ancient influencers so far, is it is the most unlikely people that God uses to tell a story or a lesson or a profound message. I don't know.
What was it our pastor was saying literally this week?
God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
That is literally the first will be last. So
yeah,
stop propping yourself up on doing it all right, because it ain't gonna matter. It's literally not gonna matter.
No, your status here on earth
like
does not
getting
matter.
your gold stars as a Christian. That's not what it is.
Nope.
That's not where it's at. When you get to heaven, you can show God, oh look, I checked every box of being a good Christian,
and he will still spit you out.
That's literally not the key to heaven.
Where's your heart? Where's your heart, and where's your faith? What's your faith look like? Ultimately.
All right, y'all. That wraps up our ancient influencer. And I think we might do John Mark next because
He sounds like a
I feel
good
like we've
one.
had really nice segues. Each ancient influencer has kind of led to the next. If y'all have suggestions for an ancient influencer, someone who you're like, man, I really don't know this character in the Bible. I hear their name, but I don't really know them. Let us know. We're always open to suggestions.
Yeah.
On ancient influencers or even on topics. So y'all give us a holler. Have a wonderful weekend.
Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Share content. Comment on posts, on episodes, everything. Like, share, and subscribe. We want
review us on iTunes.
Review us, yeah. We want to know your feedback. We want to know what we can do better on.
Unless you're gonna leave us less than a 5-star review on Apple, then you don't have to do it.
Yeah, don't do it. You're not allowed, actually.
All right, we love you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Try to get yourself in church on Sunday. Bye, guys.